Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of newspaper analysis from the perspective of UPSC examination. Today we are going to discuss the Hindu newspaper dated 28th of December 2019, Delhi edition. The articles which we are going to cover today are displayed on the screen. Let's now begin with the discussion. Now, this first article has been published on page number 10, How Not to Counter Economic Stagnation. The article talks about the increasing fiscal deficit of both center and the states, why this revenue shortfall has been created, and why the situation is even worse for the states. The article also suggests solutions which can enable the government to get rid of this problem. Now, there is another article which has been published on page number 15, Falling Revenue Risks Fiscal Parameters RBI. Now, we are going to combine these two articles and understand various aspects highlighted in the editorial and understand the idea which the author wants to communicate. The UPSC syllabus relevant for this particular article has been displayed on the screen. Now, starting with what is causing revenue shortfall. As we know that Indian economy is going through economic slowdown. The economic growth in India right now is decreasing very rapidly year by year since last 3 years, and this have had a lot of impacts on the revenue collection of the government. Let's understand how. Now, as the economic slowdown occurs, the private sector's confidence in investment as well as business activity decreases or it declines. Now, this has two consequences. Now, first is that due to economic slowdown, the demand in market goes down and hence the sale and purchase of the goods and services in the market also declines, which leads to revenue shortfall for the government. As the economic activity declines, the tax collection also declines. Now, as the confidence of the private sector goes down, they are no more interested in investing in the economy. That means they are not either willing to increase their production or they shut down their production or they are not willing to invest in capital assets. Now, let's understand the consequences of these two. Now, let us understand the general solutions which might help the government, but provided the situation we are right now, these solutions might not help. So first we will deal with the investment shortfall. As we know that due to the twin deficit being faced by the Indian economy, one is that banks are reeling under huge NPAs and hence the lending activity is very low, and there is a lot of debt on behalf of the private sector. So this investment shortfall has to be met from foreign direct investment or the relocation of the production from China to India. But according to the author, that is going to be so minimal that it will not lead to the revival of the economy. Hence, this investment shortfall component of the economic decline is unlikely to revive the demand in the Indian economy. Moving on to the revenue shortfall. Let's first understand how this revenue shortfall has been created. Government forecasts its income based on the nominal growth of the GDP. Nominal means it takes into account the current prices. Now, when the government forecasted its revenues, it took into account projected growth of 12%, but the actual growth turned out to be only 9%. This led to a lot of revenue shortfall. Now, as far as the revenues from the tax collections for the government of India is concerned, we have two components to it. Now, first is direct collections and second is indirect collections. Since the growth was projected in a wrong manner, there is going to be a fall in tax collection as well. Now, government has two options. Either it can increase the direct tax rates or it can increase the indirect tax rates. But according to the author, either of these two options are not tenable. Let's understand why. Now, as far as the direct tax collections are concerned, there are two components in it. First is corporate tax collection and second is income tax collections. In past 2 years, government has given a lot of concessions to the corporate sector to enable them to invest more into the economy. So it is highly unlikely that government will increase the rates of corporate taxes. Also, Increase in corporate taxes leads to tax evasions and deters investment in the economy, and it shifts the production from one territory to another, and hence this is highly unlikely. Now, income tax rate can neither be increased nor be decreased. Now, the question arises why they cannot be increased. Since government has given a lot of concessions to the corporates, it will be very contradictory if the income tax, which is mostly paid by the middle class of the society, will appear to favor corporates more than the middle class. There is another way to go about it by reducing these taxes, as the reduction in the taxes increases the demand, as it increases the net disposable income available to the households. As far as the income taxes are concerned, there is a pressure to reduce income tax rates to boost the demand in the economy. But a cut in income tax rates will largely benefit less than 2% of the citizens who pay a significant amount of income tax. They are well to do and unlikely to increase their consumption. Hence, this option is also not available with the government. So, as far as the increasing and decreasing the direct tax rates is concerned, this option, according to the author, is not available in the current situation. Moving on to the indirect taxes. There is an ongoing thought which suggests that the rates of indirect taxes should be enhanced or increased, which might increase the revenue collection of the government. But according to the author, as the rates or the slabs of the GST are increased, it leads to the rise in price. And as soon as the prices of the goods and services in the market increase, there is a reduction in demand. And this reduction in demand will further lead to tax collection reduction. And hence, government also does not have any option to increase indirect tax rates in the current situation. So to summarize what is causing revenue shortfall, we can understand that economic slowdown has led to reduction in investment shortfall as well as revenue collection. Government has options of increasing the tax rate as well as decreasing them. But as far as direct taxes are concerned, it is neither feasible to increase the rates nor to decrease the rates. And as far as the GST rates are concerned, enhancement of rates will lead to reduction in demand, which will further reduce the tax collections. Now let's move on and understand why the situation is even worse for the states. Now, as we know that apart from their own resources, states gets a significant amount of their resources from center. Now, one of them is share in central divisible pool, 42% suggested by 14th Finance Commission. As we just saw that since there is a revenue shortfall in the central divisible pool, the 42% of the reduced pool will lead to shortfall. And you must have read the news that the chief ministers of various states have complained about the delay in transfer. So let's suppose the pool was this much in 2015-16. Now this pool itself has reduced by this much amount because of the revenue shortfall, and the transfer of this reduced pool is being delayed by the center, and the states are not getting their share on a timely manner. Now, moving on to the next point, which is that states do not have such a diverse sources to enhance their revenues as the center has. For example, they do not get any share from the dividends which was just transferred by the RBI to the government, as well as the revenues earned by the central government through disinvestment is not included into the central divisible pool. A lot of resources gathered by central government in the times of crisis do not form the part of the divisible pool, and hence they are not available to the states. So in the times of crisis, central government has resources which they can mobilize to enhance their revenue and minimize their shortfall, which are not available to the states. Now the last is related to the transfer of funds of IGST or Integrated Goods and Services Tax. Now the center is required to give the states their share of IGST and compensate them if the revenue growth of the state goods and services taxes is less than 14%. Now this 14% is to come from the cess collected on sin goods and luxury goods. Now, as we have seen that due to the recession in the auto sector, now this component has been reduced very significantly, and center is apparently holding back the state share of IGST and arguing that the cess collection is inadequate to compensate the states for their shortfall. So overall, you can see that the condition of states is even worse as compared to the central government, as they do not have enough resources to minimize their revenue shortfalls, and they do not get any share in the extra mobilization of resources by the central government. Now, according to the author, to get out of this situation, we have two solutions. Now, the first is that government needs to focus more on unorganized sector. Now, according to the author, the focus of the central government has disproportionately been on the large corporate sector. Now, this disproportionate focus on the corporate sector has narrowed the fiscal space available without raising the demand, which means that government has spent all its money on organized sector, but it has not led to any enhancement in demand, and hence government should come up with various incentives for unorganized sector. Now, as far as the deficit spending is concerned, it means that the government increases its expenditure, breaching its deficit targets to enable the demand growth. So, for example, government has set a target of 3.5% fiscal deficit by year so and so, let's say. But keeping in view the current situation of the economy, government can breach this fiscal target and increase its fiscal deficit to enable more expenditure or investment in the economy through greater public investment. If fiscal deficit is allowed to rise further, extra resources can be used to boost incomes in the unorganized sector through greater public investment. So these two solutions are intricately linked to each other, and they might help the economy come out of this recession. This article becomes extremely important from the perspective of mains examination because it not only highlights the revenue side of the government's budget, but it also leads you to the causes which have led to the revenue shortfall, and it shows you the constrained capacity of the states to mobilize resources and consequences of such a situation. In any mains answer, it's always important to end with a solution, and this article also provides this particular solution, along with making you understand why other options are not viable. Let's now move on to the next article. This next article has been published on page number 7. Mahadai River dispute, if need be, will go against Union Ministry, says Sawant. Now, this article talks about the river dispute regarding river Mahadai between Goa and Karnataka. Now, as far as the UPSC syllabus is concerned, the interstate river water dispute becomes extremely important in GS2 syllabus under issues and challenges pertaining to federal structure, as the two entities involved in the disputes are usually the neighboring states. Now, first we will understand the constitutional provisions regarding the settlement of interstate river water disputes. Then we will understand what are the challenges which are being faced in such disputes with respect to the current provisions of the Act. And since the government has brought new Interstate River Water Dispute Bill 2019, which is pending in Rajya Sabha, we shall discuss the provisions of the new bill as well and see how this new bill addresses those challenges. So let's now begin first with the constitutional provisions. Now, under Article 262, Parliament may by law provide for the adjudication of any dispute or complaint with respect to the use, distribution or control of waters any interstate river or river valley. Now, clearly, the Constitution gives Parliament the power to enact laws for the resolution of any such dispute. And also in the second clause, the Constitution states that notwithstanding anything in this Constitution, Parliament may by law provide that neither the Supreme Court nor any other court shall exercise jurisdiction in respect of any such dispute or complaint as in referred to in clause 1. Which means that first, Parliament has the power to enact a law for the resolution of interstate river water disputes, and also Parliament can make provisions which can debar Supreme Court from interference, or in simple words we can say that Supreme Court or any other higher judiciary will not be able to interfere in such a dispute resolution. Now, these are exceptional powers and only one instance in which the jurisdiction of Supreme Court has been curtailed because of specific reasons. Now let's understand why these river disputes in India are so prolonged and cause so much of disputes among the states. Acting on the powers provided by the Constitution, the central government has enacted Interstate River Water Disputes Act. There are certain issues in the existing framework which ask for a new act which the government has brought. Let's understand those issues. Now, first of all, in the existing framework, there is a lack of negotiation mechanism, which means that as soon as a dispute arises between two states, for example, in this case between Goa and Karnataka, there is no institution which first tries to dissipate the stress or the tension by negotiating or by initiating that negotiation. So as soon as a dispute arises, it leads to demands for setting up of tribunals. And it also leads to acrimony among those states and their peoples. Now, in the existing framework, there are a lot of delays. Now, these delays arise due to two main reasons. Now, first is the delay in setting up tribunal. Under the existing Act of 1956, the central government is authorized to set up a tribunal in each and specific dispute among the states. So, for example, if there is a Kaveri dispute, there shall be a Kaveri River Tribunal, and similarly, there will be a Mahadai River Tribunal as well. So, as soon as these states, for example, in this case, Goa, approaches the central government for setting up of a tribunal, the central government takes a lot of time in setting up that tribunal. In the case of Mahadai river water dispute, only after the intervention of Supreme Court did the central government form tribunal in 2018, but this dispute has been going on since many decades. After the setting up of tribunal itself takes a lot of time in giving the award. After the tribunal has given the award has to be notified by the center. And again, central governments take a lot of time in such a notification. For example, in case of Kaveri water dispute, the tribunal gave its award in 2007, but only in 2013 that the award was notified. After the award has been notified, there has been a lot of instances where states have rejected the award and refused to obey the orders of the tribunal. So we can say that there are loopholes in the present framework which allow for non-adherence as well as rejection of the award. The case in point can be the rejection of Ravi Vyas Tribunal Award by Punjab government. One of the very important issues in the current framework is the data inadequacy. For example, the current framework does not provide for an institution which takes care of gathering, maintaining and dissipation of a data. So for example, the fluctuation in the level of water in a river takes place throughout the year and year on year. So there needs to be a maintenance of data for such water flow or discharge in the river to enable a better calibration of the award, and there is no such institution currently in India. So taking into account all these loopholes in the current framework of the Act, the government has come up with an amendment, and let's understand each provision of the bill to see how it improves upon the current framework. The important provisions of the bill have been displayed on the screen. To start with, it provides dispute resolution committee. Now, if you remember that in the existing framework, there is a lack of negotiation mechanism. And the first thing that this bill does is to provide for dispute resolution committee, which shall have a mandate of 1 year, and it shall try to bring all the stakeholders to the dispute on a table and try to resolve any dispute. Now, at the end of 1 year, extendable by 6 months, if there is no agreement between the stakeholders, only then the case shall go to the tribunal. Now, a watershed change from the current scenario is the constitution of a permanent tribunal. Now, it is important to understand that in the current Act, there is no permanent tribunal, and for each and every river water dispute there needs to be set up a separate tribunal, and hence the constitution of permanent tribunal will cut down the delays in setting up of tribunal. So this delay is addressed by permanent tribunal. Now this tribunal shall consist of experts as well as judicial members. Now in place of multiple tribunals as provided by the current framework, the bill provides for multiple benches which will deal with each and every river dispute. The issue of delays has been taken care by including a time-bound manner clause. So it will be mandatory for the tribunal to provide the award within the period of 2 years, and which can be extended only by 1 year. So now it is a statutory obligation to provide an award within a period of 1 year. So these delays have been taken care by this provision. Now as far as the delays in notification and the finality of the final award is concerned, the bill provides that the award given by the tribunal shall be final and binding, and there cannot be any escape from that. And it also obviates the need for any kind of notification by the central government. So as we just saw that the substantial amount of delay used to occur at the notification level, and since now there will be no need for notification, there will be no delay. Now, as far as the data collection is concerned, that has been addressed by authorizing central government to form an agency or give a contract to any agency for maintenance of a data bank regarding fluctuating levels of water in the river. So after understanding how Interstate River Water Dispute Bill 2019 addresses the issues plaguing the current framework, let's now understand what the Mahadai River Dispute is all about. The detailed aspects of Mahadai River Dispute can be found in the PDF attached with the video, but in short we will discuss the main aspects. Now, as far as the river Mahadai is concerned, it rises in the western Ghats and flows westwards. So the origination of the Mahadai river is in Karnataka and it flows into Goa where it meets the sea. Now this is the reason why there is a dispute between Karnataka and Goa, and there is no other state in this dispute. Now, as far as the cause of dispute is concerned, we can see that this river is being shared by Goa and Karnataka. Now, what Karnataka is trying to do is to divert the water of Mahadai towards Malprabha basin. So, Karnataka is planning to build a lot of dams in this region so that the water can be transferred into water scarce region of Karnataka. Now, this diversion of water by the Karnataka has been challenged by Goa, and Goa approached the center to form a tribunal to resolve this dispute. After the intervention of Supreme Court, center agreed to form a tribunal which is now known as Mahadai Water Dispute Tribunal. Now, the main reason why the Goa government is opposing this diversion of water is that Mahadai river meets the drinking water needs of 43% of the people of the Goa state, and reduction of discharge from Mahadai river will significantly affect water security of Goa state. As far as UPSC mains examination is concerned, the overall framework of the current Interstate Water Dispute Act and its loopholes and how they are being addressed by the new bill is more important. And as far as the prelims examination is concerned, basic information regarding Mahadai river and the reason for dispute will be sufficient. Let's now move on to the next article. Now, next article appears on the page number 10 in the form of column decisive shift. Now, this article talks about the recent decision of the government to appoint Chief of Defence Staff and create a new department in the Ministry of Defence with the name of Department of Military Affairs. Now, this becomes extremely important from the perspective of prelims examination to understand the responsibility being provided to the Chief of Defence Staff as well as the position that this person will hold by virtue of being Chief of Defence Staff. Now, as we know that the current structure of the armed forces of the country is basically British in origin, and there has not been much or major change in the way Army, Navy and Air Force work or coordinate among themselves. So the need was felt to create a position to enable this coordination and create a jointness in the functioning of the military. So for this purpose, Chief of Defence Staff position has been created. Now first let's understand various responsibilities which has been given to Chief of Defence Staff. Now, first and foremost, the person to be appointed as a Chief of Defence Staff shall be a 4-star general, which means an officer of senior most ranking in either services. Now, the Chief of Defence Staff will also head the Department of Military Affairs, which is now being created. Chief of Defence Staff will also be the permanent chairman of the Chiefs of Staff Committee. Apart from this person will also act as a principal military advisor to the Raksha Mantri, as well as military advisor to Nuclear Command Authority. An important aspect to remember as far as the position of Chief of Defence Staff is concerned, that this person shall not be eligible to hold any government office after retirement or demitting the office. Now, since such an important position is being created, it's important to highlight that the 3 chiefs will continue to advise Raksha Mantri on matters exclusively concerning their respective services. Which means that as far as the operations of Army, Navy and Air Force is concerned, they are not going to take orders or commands from Chief of Defence Staff. So this basically means that CDS will not exercise any military command including over the 3 service chiefs so as to be able to provide impartial advice to the political leadership. What this provision does is it avoids the conflict of interest between such an important position and tri-services chiefs. Let's now understand the responsibilities which have been bestowed on the position of Chief of Defence Staff. The first and the foremost responsibility of Chief of Defence Staff would be to bring about jointness in operation. Since independence, the armed forces have been working separately with no concept of jointness, and hence Chief of Defence Staff would try to create that. Now, CDS would also ensure optimal utilization of infrastructure and rationalize it through the process of the jointness which we just discussed. Let's understand this with an example. So currently, both Army as well as Air Force have Apache attack helicopters, and they both have separate training centers to train the pilots to operate attack helicopters. Now, what CDS would do is to enable deduplication of such infrastructure so that the resources can be saved and military forces become more efficient in handling their infrastructure. Now, currently two plans are made for the army. First is 5-year defense capital acquisition plan, and the second is 2-year roll-on annual acquisition plans. Now, these both plans go waste as there is no coordination among the services, and hence the responsibility of the CDS would be to implement these two plans. As you might be aware of the current status of capital acquisition of various defense forces, and due to various reasons there have been prolonged delays in such acquisitions. Now, another very important responsibility assigned to Chief of Defence Staff is to assign inter-services prioritization to capital acquisition, which basically means that it will be the duty of the CDS to decide what equipments or machinery needs to be bought first and what other acquisition can wait for the next year or even 5 years. And the last responsibility of CDS would be to bring about reforms in the functioning of three services to enable them to better their combat capabilities and avoid wasteful expenditure. Now, as we just discussed, that along with the position of Chief of Defence Staff, government has also created Department of Military Affairs, which will be headed by CDS. Now, it is important for us to have a look at the functions of Department of Military Affairs. Now, Department of Military Affairs will deal with all the armed forces of the Union, which means Army, Navy and the Air Force. Now, integrated headquarters of the Ministry of Defence, which comprises Army Headquarters, Navy Headquarters and Air Force Headquarters, as well as Defence Staff Headquarters, shall be housed within Department of Military Affairs. Now, Department of Military Affairs shall also look into territorial army and all the matters relating to Army, Navy and Air Force. Now, these sets of information are very important from the perspective of prelims examination, as this department is newly created and is continuously in news. Let's now move on to the next news. Next, we are going to discuss an image which has been published on page number 8. It shows students performing Kalaripayattu against the backdrop of Tipu's fort. Kalaripayattu as an art form is extremely important due to its long-standing history within Indian martial arts. It is believed to be the oldest surviving martial art in India. It is also considered to be among the oldest martial arts still in existence, with its origin in the martial arts timeline dating back to at least 3rd century BC. Also, UPSC has asked questions related to this particular art form in the past. With reference to India's culture and tradition, what is Kalaripayattu? And the right answer is, it is an ancient martial art and a living tradition in some parts of South India. So we shall discuss basic information with regard to this particular art form. Now, Kalaripayattu, or sometimes also known as Kalari, is an ancient martial art and a fighting system that originated in modern day Kerala. So this needs not to be confused with the timeline. It originated in ancient time, but the location was present day Kerala. Now, Kalaripayattu is a martial art designed for the ancient battlefield, and the word Kalari, the root word for the Kalaripayattu, means battlefield. So this complete word has its origination in battlefield with weapons and combative techniques that are unique to India. So what is distinguishing about Kalaripayattu is that it is an ancient art form, but the way it is practiced and the fighting styles are typical to the Indian subcontinent and especially to the southern part of the country. Now, when we say that this is an ancient art form, we need to have evidences to support this claim. There are two main evidences for this. One is Chinese literature and the second is Indian literature, Sangam literature. Now, as far as the Chinese literature is concerned, we already know that the traditional martial art of China is known as Kung Fu, which has been traditionally popularized and propagated by Buddhist monks belonging to Shaolin Temple. Now, a lot of literatures trace the origin of Kung Fu to a Buddhist monk who went from India to China, who was also Kalaripayattu master. So this shows direct connection between ancient Indian martial art form and ancient Chinese art form. Now, as far as the evidences in Sangam literature is concerned, this shall be considered as a primary source of information about Indian martial arts. Now, the Aknanuru and Purananuru describe the use of spears, swords, shields, bows, and Shilamban in the Sangam era. And we know that Sangam literature was written in almost the same area where this art form originated. So this shows that the practice of Kalaripayattu is extremely old, demonstrated by these two literatures. The images on the screen shows various poses given by Kalaripayattu masters. Now, as far as the art form goes, it is extremely important for us to know what are the components of this martial art form. Now, there are two main components to it. While a student begins to learn the art form, they not only learn about the use of weapons, but they also gain knowledge about anatomy. Now, as far as the weapons are concerned, Kalaripayattu includes use of strikes, kicks, grappling, weaponry, and healing methods. Now, these healing methods come from the knowledge of anatomy. It is important to remember from the perspective of prelims examination that Kalaripayattu does not only deals with the fighting knowledge, it also includes intricate knowledge of pressure points on the human body and healing techniques that incorporate the knowledge of Ayurveda and yoga. So the originators of the Kalaripayattu were well aware of the consequences of battlefield wounds and hence they integrated the knowledge of Ayurveda and yoga into the system so that masters are also aware of the healing techniques. Now the question arises, if this particular art form was so prevalent and famous in the ancient time, why did it lose significance? Now, since this particular art form was patronized by Chola, Chera and Pandyas, now following the collapse of these princely states, this particular art form lost its significance. So from the perspective of prelims examination, it's important for us to remember the origination, the location where it originated, evidences which are found in support of the origination, the technique of the art and the components used while practicing that art, as well as the reasons why it lost the significance. Let's now move on to the next article. The next article, Winged Visitors Flock to Pulicat with Bird Watchers in Tow, has been published on page number 8. Now this article talks about the annual Flamingo Festival which is held in Nellore district is about to begin and the birds have started arriving in the lake. Now this lake is Pulicat Lake and the particular bird which needs attention is flamingo bird. Now UPSC in past years has asked questions related to lakes as well as bird varieties. Now this particular example from 2013 prelims examination has been taken. Consider the following. Nokrek Biosphere Reserve, Garo Hills, this is correct. Second is Loktak Lake, Bareil Range, it's incorrect. And Namdapha National Park situated in Dafla Hills, this is also incorrect. And the right answer is A, one only. So you can see that the location of lakes and reserves and national parks become important. So we'll start by first learning about Pulicat Lake. Then we'll go on and have some basic information about flamingo bird. Now, Pulicat Lake is the second largest brackish water lake or lagoon in the country after Chilika Lake. Now, as far as the location of Pulicat Lake is concerned, it is situated in southern parts of Andhra Pradesh in coastal areas of Andhra Pradesh. You can see the location of the Pulicat Lake on the map of the country. Now, it is also situated on the borders of Tamil Nadu, but it lies in the Andhra Pradesh state. Now, as far as the type of lake is concerned, it is lagoon. Now, as you know that lagoon is a shallow water body separated from larger body by barrier island or reef. In the second image displayed on the screen, you can see the location of the Pulicat Lake marked with blue color and this is ocean. Bay of Bengal, and you can see that the Pulicat Lake or Pulicat Lagoon is separated by this barrier island known as Sriharikota, which also houses Satish Dhawan Space Center, from where most of the rockets and satellites of ISRO are launched. So this becomes important from that perspective as well. Since it is separated from ocean, the majority of water comes from northeast monsoon. Now, as we know that monsoons in India, as they start leaving, they follow this direction. The majority of rainfall is induced in this region, and hence this water becomes the source for the river. Now, some important or special features to be remembered as far as the Pulicat Lake is concerned, that it houses Pulicat Lake Bird Sanctuary. We just discussed that it also houses Barrier Reef Island known as Sriharikota, which is also Satish Dhawan Space Center, and it is a special attraction for tourists and bird lovers as it receives inflow of migratory birds and also flamingos. One important piece of information with regard to Pulicat Lake is that it is not a Ramsar site. Let's now have a look at the flamingo bird. The images of the flamingo and their colony as well as their global distribution has been shown on the screen. Now, as far as their type is concerned, they are a type of wading birds. Now, wade or wading as a word means to walk through water. So these birds are mostly found along coastal areas. And that should become clear if you see the global distribution of these birds as well. They mostly belong to the coastal region of the world. Now, as far as the food is concerned, flamingos filter feed on brine shrimp, blue algae, as well as insects and their larvae, small insects, mollusks, and crustaceans, and hence it can be concluded that these birds are omnivorous. Now, one particular feature of flamingo is that they are always found in colonies, and these kinds of pictures frequently appear in newspaper as thousands and lakhs of flamingos flock at a particular location, making it look very beautiful and attracts a lot of tourism. Now, this next news appears on page number 15. Gross NPAs may rise to 9.9% by next September, according to RBI report. Recent RBI report states that the gross NPA ratio of banks may increase to 9.9% from current level of 9.3%. Now, this news has been discussed on DNS dated 26th of December 2019 by Mangal sir. On that day, the report was published in the form of data set in the Hindu, and it was elaborately discussed. This brings us to the end of today's discussion. Let's now discuss questions for prelims examination. Now, the first question is, which of the following statements are correct about Pulicat Lake? First, it is the largest lagoon in the country. It's incorrect as the largest lagoon in the country is Chilka Lake. And the second statement is the major source of fresh water for the lake is a river, which is also incorrect as the major source of fresh water for this lake is the northeast monsoon. And hence the right answer is D, none of the above. The second question is, which of the following statements are correct about Kalaripayattu? Now, the first option is it is an ancient martial art form of India. Correct. The second statement is Sangam literature contains evidences regarding this martial art form, which is also correct, and hence the right answer is C, both 1 and 2. With this, we come to the end of today's DNS. Let's have a look at the question of the day.